And my name is Jacqueline Rivera, and our presentation revolves around beauty standards in today's society. I thought this was an interesting real life situation because it's a thing that happens a lot within our society. I decided to do this real life situation because it's something that is important to speak about, how it can affect us, and how many people deal with the pressures of fulfilling the requirements of what's considered being beautiful.
And why I thought the real life situation is important is because it's a very hot topic nowadays since people are becoming more aware of this situation and it has brought a lot of controversy. This real life situation is significant to me because it is important to address topics like these that are present in many people's lives.
There's a variety of ways that beauty standards can affect people. We know this because there has been many cases where people have been negatively affected. For example, some people become very insecure and fall into depression or other worse scenarios simply because they don't fit common beauty standards. In my personal knowledge, I find it hard to believe that beauty standards can negatively affect people. People react to beauty standards emotionally because throughout history and in present day, we follow the same beauty standard of having light skin and being skinny. But not everyone can fit this beauty standard, so they feel the need to change. It is fascinating how people are influenced to follow beauty standard, but I wonder, why do people look into so much about beauty standards that they take it seriously? The limits of our real life situation is that we aren't able to conclude all of the negative effects it can have on people, but we will focus on the general things that has to do with sense perception and language. Another limit with this real life situation is that it's very broad, and for us it was difficult to include the negative effects of beauty standards around the world. So we mainly focus on the negative effects of beauty in America.
Our knowledge question is, to what extent does our sense perception and language influence our beauty standards? This knowledge question would help us explain a real life situation because we are going to be exploring what influences beauty standards and then connecting it back to how these factors can have negative effects on people. An assumption that we had right away about our knowledge question was that our sense perception and language had a huge influence on our beauty standards since we have personally experienced it and have seen it around social media. The ways of knowing that we will use to explore our knowledge question are reason, specifically deductive reasoning, because people use reason when trying to figure out whether they fit the beauty expectations or not that are set by others. Then we will also explore emotion because we are going to see how people react to beauty standards. And then sense perception, specifically sight and hearing, because our senses are a constant part of our life and can have a big influence on us. And lastly, language, because we see words everywhere in books, magazines, TV that are describing what is or isn't beautiful. And then we will also explore the area of knowledge history because we are going to explore how beauty standards have been present since the beginning and how events in history have affected the way we see people.
For the first sub question, how does the media affect beauty standards? Well, the media plays an important role in our society. We have radios, newspapers, magazines, television, and the internet. In my personal knowledge, when I go to the store and I go by the cashier area and I see magazines covered with celebrities who people idolize, they are always skinny, have clear skin, and light skin. These people are known for being beautiful. However, these celebrities and the magazine covers aren't what they look like in person because they were changed to portray what the media considers to be beautiful. For instance, in this Photoshop picture of Kim Kardashian for a magazine, the difference between the before and the after is that her thighs and her waist are thinner, and her skin has been lightened. And now for this picture, Britney Spears, there was more of a dramatic change as it shows the before where she has wrinkles, she's tanner, and her freckles are noticeable. In the after picture, her skin was made lighter. Her freckles cannot be recognized. Her skin shows no signs of wrinkles. The jaw is more defined and her nose is smaller. Then for Justin Bieber, his muscles are more defined. Ultimately, the Photoshop pictures are the results of what the media considers to be beautiful. A counter-argument can be that today companies are becoming aware about how negative beauty standards are and are using models that don't fit the usual beauty standards. For example, in this magazine cover, it shows Chantel Brown that has a rare skin disease called vitiligo. As it is shown in the cover, she has white spots around her body. That goes against the common beauty standard because usually you don't see models that have skin disease as a magazine cover. The photographer did not Photoshop her white spots also. Overall, the media has a huge influence in many people. We live in the 21st century and are constantly exposed to generic examples of beauty. No matter what we see in the media, people will have some sort of reaction to it. This connects back to the knowledge question, which is to what extent does our sense perception and language influence our beauty standards? Because with our sense perception of sight, where we see many things like the magazines that influence what should be considered to be the beauty standard. And then connecting back to our real life situation, this shows how the media can have a negative effect in people because they are shown unrealistic things that are said in the Dove study. The study done by the Dove Company that showed how women wrote 5 million disparaging tweets about beauty. The survey sample showed that 78% felt that the portrayal of women on social media was very unrealistic.
The second sub question is, how has history affected the standards of beauty? Throughout history, people with light skin have always been treated better than those with darker skin. For example, in my IB history class, we learned how although slavery had been abolished in Cuba in 1886, the status of blacks had not risen to the level of the whites, who were their former masters, who were of European, largely Spanish origin. Blacks invariably had the lowest incomes and lived in the poorest condition. The idea that lighter skinned people are treated better than dark skinned people has been reflected in beauty standards. Like in the clip in our intro, we see that most of the people that come up when we type in beautiful women or men are white, especially when we look up beautiful kids. This idea that white people are superior to black people has affected people of color negatively. We could see this in an experiment called the doll test that was conducted on a group of African Americans using black and white dolls by psychologists Kenneth and Mamie Clark during the 1940s. The kids were asked to identify both of the race of the dolls and which colored doll they preferred. The results was that most of the children preferred the white doll and assigned positive characteristics to it. A more modern example of this test is this one.
Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because she's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Which doll looks most like you?
Like me.
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay.
This answers our knowledge question: to what extent does our sense perception and language influence our beauty standards? By showing how what we have seen and heard over the years about white superiority has influenced society's beauty standards, because white beauty is a must-have while being darker puts you in the ugly category. A possible counterclaim is that people outside of the black community are adapting things from the black culture. This is known as cultural appropriation. People are beginning to find the black culture interesting and are adapting things from them into their own lives. For example, here we see Kylie Jenner and cornrows, which are popular among the black community. With this possible counterclaim, our knowledge question, to what extent does our sense perception and language influence our beauty standards, will be answered in a more modern way. Our beauty standards are influenced by what we see and hear now, and while there is racism, it is looked down upon more, and people are beginning to love and accept different cultures. Throughout history, having light skin made you better than darker people because you were wealthier, had more rights, and overall had more power. This is still reflected today and has been reflected in beauty standards. It is common for cover magazines to have more white people than darker people, or for the main characters of TV shows to be white. Ultimately, history has a huge influence in beauty standards.
The last sub question is, how do emotion and language interfere with how we accept beauty standards? Within our society, we hear people telling us how being healthy is being beautiful. And when they comply healthy, they usually mean by being thin. We use the language of complimenting how we look pretty or ugly. It gets in our head that in order to be beautiful, you have to wear specific things based on how people tell you that you look cute, nice, pretty with them. But then, this is where emotion is implied with language. Based on what people say and how you appear, this influences us that if we are dressed in this specific way that people like, or the way people say your body looks healthy, it motivates us to be happy because this is what beauty standards is for them and for us. For example, in my personal knowledge, my mother prepares me to wear dresses, wear makeup, have my hair all done. That is how she sees as being beautiful. But if I wear a pair of jeans, a plain t-shirt, and my sneakers, then she tells me I look strange, that this isn't how a girl should look like, that I should dress like the other girls who wear nice clothes. This shows how when my mother tells me in what to wear, that is her beauty standards. Then in my English literature class, we read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. The main character Pecola wants to have blue eyes for one big reason, and that is that people see colored eyes as beautiful. Plus, in an emotional way, she will be happy with them. Another thing is that the language that we hear in person can tell us a lot about what the beauty standards is. The language is everywhere. The only problem is that it has become more negative. Bree City stated that the fashion and the media industries always tells women about how they aren't beautiful enough. There is an endless stream of beauty products to fix our body shape, our complexion, and our hair. Another lady who has first-hand knowledge about this is Ashley Crouch. She said, I was so disoriented by working in the media and fashion for years. I felt like I was hearing everyone else's voices and not listening to my own. This shows how it can negatively affect people just by listening to others talking what the beauty standards are. The counterclaim is that people can simply ignore the way people tell them that they look disgusting or that they look beautiful. There was a study done in New Zealand. Auckland University Dr. Shane Woodward stated that while the global standards of beauty were ruthlessly enforced overseas, we might have a bit of wiggle room in New Zealand. Liang said, when I was about 13, I realized the cool kids were only cool because they said so, and I didn't have to subscribe to that. I look at fashion and beauty now and say, yeah, that's for somebody else and not for me. This could mean that language can easily be ignored, so it goes against that language influence our beauty standards to a great extent. However, although there are cases where language doesn't influence some people, the majority of people are still affected about the beauty standards, both positively and negatively. To conclude, emotion and language are a huge part of our lives. There is no way to avoid your emotions or to avoid what people say. So, it is to a great extent that language influences our beauty standards. Therefore, there will always be some sort of an emotional reaction to how we have set beauty standards.
To conclude, our sense perception and language have a huge influence in our beauty standards. We live in the 21st century where we are surrounded by different kinds of media outlets. We have social media, TV, the radio, magazines, and books. We are constantly seeing who is on these things, and most of the time it is a fabricated version of regular people. Constantly seeing and hearing this praised image, the people that are light skinned, skinny, have blue eyes, or have muscles, has influenced most people's beauty standards. However, these expectations are no surprise, especially the one of having light skin. These fabricated beauty standards affect people negatively. The majority of people do not fit this perfect image, which causes a negative reaction as seen in the doll test, where the kids think negatively of themselves because they aren't white. A possible flaw in our conclusion is that we may not consider every aspect of what people consider to be the beauty standards, because we only specifically look at the common American beauty standard, which, for example, is being slim, which is an issue because people are affected by beauty standards all around the world. Since I am a person of color, I have been victim to these beauty standards, and I can agree that they have negative effects on people who do not fit them. However, someone who is white might not fully understand the difficulties that others, specifically people of color, face when they aren't represented in the media. Therefore, they might not agree with their conclusion. For me, when I was growing up, the only person who I identified with on TV was Dora. However, a white person has many people they can identify that's in the media, so they can't truly connect with someone who isn't well represented. They might be able to understand the situation, but they can't connect with the person. Our conclusion applies to our real life situation because we explained how our sense perception includes hearing and seeing, and how if people are constantly seeing and hearing how they don't fit a certain beauty standard, then most likely they will begin to think negatively about themselves. Also, how just the fact that not being accurately represented in the media can make you feel secluded and like you are odd and don't fit in with the crowd. And then when you are represented, it's usually a stereotype of yourself, and you feel made fun of and almost embarrassed about yourself. We also show how the beauty standards that are put in place in the media can have a negative impact on people, since most regular people don't fit under the terms of the beauty standards, which are usually having a well-fit body and light skin. This will cause the majority of the people to feel that they aren't good enough. Another thing that the conclusion implies with the real life situation is that it shows how we are constantly reminded by what we hear and see everywhere that buying cosmetics, fixing up your hair, and getting products to lose weight, and buying nice clothes are the things that define us and what makes us beautiful. Also, the exclusion of colored people is a severe thing and has brought on insecurities to many people. Which is why another real life situation that I thought about was how I have a 10-year-old niece who is a lot darker than her sisters. Whenever we go to the store, she always points out at dolls and says how she wants to be white like them so she can be pretty. Or sometimes she sees me getting ready and tells me how she wishes she was as light as me because the kids at her school make fun of her for being dark. Another real life situation that we thought about is a girl wants to become a fashion model for a well known company, but she doesn't have a chance to get accepted because she doesn't fit the requirements of being tall between 5'8" to 6 feet, and she is 90 to 120 pounds. Which is similar to how the model Barbara Palvin was kicked out of being a Victoria's Secret angel because she had supposedly gained a lot of weight.